Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing the eyeshadow palette lovers tag video. I did do an eyeshadow palette tag video, I don't know, like a couple months ago, but I actually just took that upon myself. Nobody had tagged me in it. This one, somebody actually tagged me in. My friend Nicole Fisher, her and I were friends really early on in our YouTube journeys. We even, you might recall, did a swap together. I will link that here and also down below. I will also link her version of this tag down below so you guys can check that out, and I may or may not tag one or more of my favorite YouTubers down below to also do this tag, so keep an eye on their channels to see if any of them respond. The original creator of this tag, I haven't watched the video, but just like Nicole always likes to try and tag the original creator, I also wanted to do that. So her name is Angelica Limar. I will link her channel and her video down below so you guys can check it out if that's something you're interested in. When I was sitting down to do this tag, which was 10 minutes ago, and going through all of my eyeshadow palettes, some categories and questions came really easy to me and others not so much. I did kind of find that for every question I have more than one palette that sprang to mind. So having said that, there's 10 questions to this palette. There won't be, or to this tag, you're not just gonna see 10 palettes from me. You're probably gonna see more like 15 to 20, just because for me personally, several different palettes fit certain categories and several palettes fit multiple categories, so you're also probably going to see some repeats. I'm going to stop rambling because this is a fairly hefty tag. Let's get straight into this guy. So the first question is, name an eyeshadow palette that you regret not buying. It's funny, this wasn't very difficult for me, and it's just been more recently that some of these palettes have actually come out. So the stupid thing is I'm pretty sure they're actually still available. I don't know. I definitely do get regrets when I don't buy palettes, particularly limited edition palettes. I think we all kind of feel that way, but you know, those regrets eventually fade with me. Especially because I do have such an extensive collection of makeup that it's not like I regret it because I don't have anything that's similar or, you know, whatever. I just, for whatever reason, was drawn to those palettes and then I didn't buy them and then they, you know, got discontinued or they were a limited edition run and they don't have the stock anymore, whatever. So like I said, the two palettes that I had for this category are actually still available. One is the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. That is the palette that they released kind of in their Thanksgiving fall pre-holiday kind of outlet. I have the Gingerbread Spice palette. I love it. I didn't get the Extra Spicy palette last year, which is also sort of a regret of mine because at first I thought like, oh, you only need one or the other. You don't really need both of those. And then the more that I saw videos on it, I did have some like reverse buyer's remorse or something like that, in the sense that like I looked at the palette, I had it in my hand and I went, nah, I don't need that palette. There will always be a part of me that kind of wishes that I had got the Extra Spicy palette, but it's too late now. And now I'm feeling sort of similar about the Pumpkin Spice palette. It was in my cart on Sephora a while back. And I was trying to decide on some other things. I think I was looking for things to put in my bridesmaids proposal boxes, which is another video I filmed today, but it won't be up for a few months. So you guys have that to look forward to for a long time. And while I was waiting, it went out of stock, and I have it so that they'll notify me when it comes back in stock, but it's been a while and it hasn't happened. So I don't know if it's going to come back in stock on Sephora's website or if I missed my shot. I'm sure I could buy it on Too Faced website. But I'm just sort of at this place where like, I can't decide if I really want it. And one day I'll say, no, Sam, you don't need it. And the next day I'll say, yeah, I really want that palette. So I'm really torn. And the other one that I'm a little bummed out that I didn't jump on immediately is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. I love Natasha Denona shadows. I love the formula. They are really expensive, and that came out in the summertime when all of those bronze collections were coming out. So MAC put their bronze collection out, and Natasha Denona did a bronze collection. Like, everybody sort of went that vibe, that like bronze for summer kind of thing. And I looked at the palette and I really liked the idea of it. I loved all the golds and the coppers and the bronzy sort of tones, and I ended up not buying it. Now again, it is still available. I still have that opportunity should I so desire it that badly. I really can't decide because it's not an inexpensive palette. It's like, I know when I watched Nicole's video, she had regrets about not buying certain ColourPop palettes, which are definitely more affordable than the ones that I'm regretting. So I feel like I have a little more thought to put in it, although I am very trigger happy. And as soon as I want something, I tend to just go buy it, which is not the right thing to do. Okay, so question 2 is very much the opposite of the first question. It is, what is a palette that you do regret buying? Now, I actually thought that this would be harder than it really was to hunt them out, because generally when I do get a palette that I end up regretting buying or that I don't use, I declutter it or I give it to somebody else who will use it or something like that. Particularly just in the fact that A, I have my channel, and B, I do have an addiction to makeup. Like I don't want to say I get, because like that makes it sound like I'm getting them sent to me. I don't get PR or anything like that, but like I pick up, or in BoxyCharms, I get a lot of different palettes. Now, I also am very capable of when I buy a new palette, unless it's something that I'm 100% like wanting for a long period of time, if it's more of an impulse buy when I go to a Sephora or something like that, I have taken palettes back. 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, I did have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. I brought it home and I ended up looking at it and deciding that I didn't need it that badly. I didn't want it that badly. I never used it or anything like that. I just took it back. And another one was the Lunar Beauty Strawberry Dreams palette. Again, a palette that looked gorgeous. When I looked at it in the palette, when I swatched it at the store, I really liked it, but I ultimately decided that I didn't really need it. Now, I do have a few palettes that I do regret buying, kind of. Not that they're not really pretty or that other people don't love them. It's just that for me, they didn't quite fill, sorry, my hair's a mess right now, a place in my collection that I maybe thought that they would, or the quality didn't end up being what I thought it would. And this got really tricky for me because there is a question later that's like, what's a palette you thought you would use more than you would? And a couple of these could sort of cross into that realm, except that there's some palettes that I have that I thought I would use a lot that I don't, but I don't really regret buying them. Like I would still buy them again if given all the same information and put in the same position, but these palettes I wouldn't repurchase. So the first one is the Dominic Cosmetics Rustic Glam palette. I also used to have the original Latte palette, which I decluttered. So it's not that the shadow quality isn't really nice in this, or that they're not really nice colors. Just for me, the palette is a little long. It is kind of weighty. And while the colors are beautiful, like for me, I don't know, if I'm traveling or something like that, I want a little bit more staple of a palette, a little bit more option. And at home, it kind of is in the back of the drawer, so I don't use it that much. So I think if faced with this again, would I have bought this again? Probably not. If there was like a miniature version of this palette that maybe just had like these 6 shadows over here with like the blues and the kind of like sandy colors, that would be really pretty. I would really enjoy that. But for the most part, I rarely use this. Now, when I do use this, it is fantastic. The quality is there. The formula is great. Beautiful pigmentation, all of that. It's just that, I don't know, I look at it and I don't get excited like I do with other palettes. So then when it comes time to me being like, what palette do I want to use today? This is not normally at the forefront of my mind. Another one that I regret purchasing, and I have mentioned this before, is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina Mini Pro Pigment Volume 2 palette. I don't have any of the big Norvina palettes, basically because A, the colors weren't speaking to me for a long time. I did like the look of the 4th one, the pink one, but at that point I was just kind of like out of that interest. So I did get the mini one, and I don't know, it's just not as pigmented as I thought it would be. It doesn't show up or translate on the eyes quite like it does in the pans. There's a ton of fallout in it, and I mean, realistically, I got this for a few choice colors. I didn't get this thinking that I'd be able to create a ton of cohesive looks with just this palette. And for a palette this small, I kind of think of them as almost like travel palettes. And I would like to be able to just take this one palette and go and know that I'd get a look that I wanted. And I just don't see that. And I hold on to it because I keep thinking like, oh, well, it's got this one really pretty shimmery green that I do like. And it's got this. Ultimately, on my next declutter, I've got to let this go. I really do regret spending the money on it. And the other two palettes that I'm very torn about, again, because they were really expensive and they're very hit or miss, are the two Marc Jacobs iconic eyeshadow palettes. I know some people absolutely swear by these. Maybe it's the color pick, like the colors that I bought. So I've got the editorial one, which is like the darker kind of greeny khaki tone. And then I've also got the stiletto one, which I'm pretty sure was limited edition. And it's kind of like shimmery and purple and cool toned. I regretted having these for a long time. The one thing I do really like in these is the dark colors. So there's a black in this and a gorgeous, gorgeous dark, like shimmery brown gray kind of thing. They are absolutely stunning, super pigmented, just beautiful, beautiful shadows. It's just the price tag that's on these. Is the formula any better really than other shadows that I have at a fraction of the cost? No, you're not really getting that much product in them. They kind of bore me a little bit now. I think this was like a fad that I was jumping on because so many people do rant and rave about these palettes. They think they're amazing. Tati, for example, for a really long time, in the back of all her videos, had all of them lined up. And normally when she likes something, I trust it. So I was like, maybe I should get them and see what the hype is about. I probably wouldn't repurchase them unless one comes out that is absolutely amazing, blows me out of the like water. I wouldn't buy any more of these. Question number 3, name a palette that you haven't used as much as you thought you would. I've got 2 palettes here that I feel very strongly about that. And it's one of those things because like, it's not that I haven't used them because I don't like them as much as I thought I did, or they didn't perform like I thought they would, because in both cases, the formula is amazing. When I do use them, I'm always so happy. But this is, again, a little tricky for me because I do have so many eyeshadow palettes and I really try to like use different ones every time so that I'm not getting stuck in, you know, using only one palette and the other ones just sit there. I really do try and cycle through my palettes. But the 2 that I was so sure I would use way, way more than I do are my Jeffree Star Thirsty palette. I wanted this palette for so freaking long. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's got a ton of shimmers in it, some bright colors, some neutral colors, really, really versatile palette. And it performs fantastic. Like the quality of the shadows is amazing. The pigmentation, the blendability, everything is great in this. I think it's just because a lot of the reason I don't reach for it is it sits at the bottom of my drawers. If I had a different setup for makeup, which unfortunately we don't have the room for in this house, but maybe, you know, years down the line, I'll be able to have a beauty room that's a little bit more the way I want it. Because I only have one drawer where I keep my eyeshadow palettes, it sits at the bottom of the drawer. And when I'm in a rush or I'm in a hurry to do my makeup, I'm not going to dig to the bottom of the drawer just to find this. And also on videos, I find that I'll open the drawer and be like, what do I want to play with today? And something on top will catch my eye again before I can even get to the bottom. And the other one that I thought I would use way more than I do is my Scott Barnes Snatchral Volume 1 palette. Again, fantastic quality. Nobody talks about this palette. It breaks my heart. It is a super neutral palette, which I know a lot of people are kind of over that now. I think we're all in the realm of like looking for more combination palettes that have some neutrals and some colors. At least I'm that way. But the shadow quality with these is phenomenal. It gives beautiful, beautiful looks. I should use it more than I do, but once again, it kind of lives closer to the bottom of my drawer, and I'm not a big fan of traveling with neutral only palettes. Again, it depends for how long. If I'm only going away for a weekend, I could definitely see myself taking something like this. But if I'm going away for a week or 2 weeks or longer, I want something a little bit more versatile, something that has those pops of color. And normally that's why I used to buy little palettes like this, because I was like, I'll take a big neutral palette and then a small palette that has some color in it. it just never ended up happening, and I just don't use it. And it's one of those things that I really need to pull palettes out of the bottom of my drawer and kind of leave them in a more accessible area so that I remember to use them. I just haven't done that. Number 4, what is a palette that you use more than you thought you would? Again, I have 2 options. So the first one is one that I was actually shocked about how much I liked it. I only got it pretty recently, but in that time, it has traveled with me. I mean, granted, I'm not going anywhere international, but like when we go to the trailer or when we go away, I like to take this palette. This is my NYX The Escape Artist palette. I picked it up to do my full face full of NYX makeup video, and I was so pleasantly surprised by it. The mattes are really nice. The shimmers are really nice. It is, how many pans are it? It's a 40 pan palette. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it certainly isn't expensive. It feels a little like cheapy, like plasticky, kind of like the palettes I had when I was like a little girl, when you get that like play makeup that always has the pink bottom and like the clear lid, like the clear acrylic stuff. It kind of has that feel to it in terms of the packaging, but the shadows are fantastic. You get a good range of neutral colors and some bright pops of colors. There's a nice variety of shimmers and matte shadows. They didn't double up on too many of the shades. There's a couple that are quite similar that they maybe could have, like, I don't know, somehow put something else in, but I just think it's a really versatile palette, and it offers you an opportunity to do a lot of different looks. Like I was saying before, something completely neutral, something completely bright and fun with the pinks, the oranges, something dark and smoky. So many options with this palette. I was shocked by how much I actually liked it and how much I use it, because I didn't see that coming when I picked it up. And the other one that I use all the time, and you guys will know that I use it all the time, and I was really surprised, is my Natasha Denona Tropic palette. I kind of bought this in like a impulse sort of way. I had seen ShanXO using it on her channel, and I really liked the look she got, so I bought it purely for that, because I had looked at it before and been like, meh, I don't know, it's cute, but I don't think I really need it. But I use this palette all the time. It travels with me a ton. Like, it looks like beat up to hell right now. Like, I don't know if you guys can see all the scratches and stuff. It is super beat up, and I have made nice divots in a few of the shadows. I've worn every shadow at least once. The quality is fantastic. I know it's super expensive. I know they don't make it anymore, but it is just one of my go-to palettes. This one, again, it travels with me all the time. And even doing the look that I did today, which is like if I did my own makeup for my wedding, what would it kind of look like? I used Natasha Denona palettes because I trust the formula, I trust the pigmentation, and they never ever fail me. Question 5, what is my favorite half neutral, half colored palette? Now, this is something I mentioned earlier where I lean more towards those kind of palettes now, because you know, they just offer a little bit more versatility, and I've found that that is very important to me in an eyeshadow palette, is how versatile is this palette? Not just like, oh, that's a pretty palette, but like, how much use can I get out of this? Because I'm coming to that point in makeup where I have so much of it that, I don't know, I'm trying not to buy as much. It is really difficult, and I would say COVID's actually helped me with that, because I haven't been able to go impulse buy. I haven't been able to go kill time by going to Sephora and things like that. I've just sort of been sitting, you know, at home when I'm not working. So it's been kind of good for that. But when I do look for new palettes, I look at it and say, ooh, that's got some really nice neutral shades, but look at those beautiful pops of color. So again, I've got 2. One being the Natasha Denona one I just mentioned. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but obviously there's a ton of neutral shades here. You've got that really fun, bright party row on the bottom. You could do a lot with this. You could do something in the neutrals with blues, something with the greens and blues, purples. So much versatility in this palette. I love it. And another palette that I talk about a lot that I think has a really good range of neutrals and of colors is the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. This is my favorite Urban Decay palette. It is the one I recommend the most to people, I would say, because I think it is fairly affordable. I love the packaging. Also, I love that the back completely folds down on itself, but you still have this really, really big mirror if that is something that you look for in a palette. But it has all of these beautiful neutral colors, and then you've got all of these dark, smoky colors, some bright pinky purples up here, a really nice shimmery purple, a peachy pink. It's just a lot. There's not the same kind of bright colors that are in the Natasha Denona palette, but at the same time, it's a super versatile palette that you can make like a ton of looks out of. I did a video which was like a 5 looks 1 palette. I will link that as well so you guys can see what I was able to do with this, but I just think that it gives you a lot of options, and because the palette is really sturdy, really well made, a really good travel option. Okay, so the next one is name a palette you bought for the packaging. I'm gonna be honest with you, I am not really a package buyer. I like it when a palette looks really nice, but ultimately for me, it does come down to what is inside the palette more than how it looks. There are certain things that I like more in some palettes than in others. But at the end of the day, I don't buy a lot of palettes just for the packaging. I find that I will buy palettes in spite of the packaging. And by that, I mean like my La Roque Pirates of the Caribbean palette. It's got this fat box packaging that like you can't store anywhere, but I love the shadows in it, so I didn't care. Same thing, my Urban Decay Game of Thrones palette. Stupid packaging, not really good for storage, but the shadows are incredible and beautiful colors, so I kind of did it despite. So one palette that really it was the packaging that sold me, and this is one I've already mentioned that I returned, was again the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. I love the blue and the white striping with the gold writing. I just thought it was very classy, simple, elegant. I loved it. It always worried me a little bit because I figured that white would get dirty, but like I said, I ended up returning it, so no big deal. Another one that I got for the packaging as well. Now granted, I do like the shadows in this, is the Jouer Tan Lines. I just think the package is so freaking cute. I love like the ombre sunset with like the gold leaves, the gold palms. I do love the palette itself as well. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, but I will say that the packaging did help its case because I think it was the packaging that drew my eye rather than the shadows within. And the only other ones that I can think of that like a lot of times I do, not that I don't like the shadows inside because I do, I rant about them all the time, but the Natasha Denona ones, the ones that are in these hard cases, which is how she's been making them for a while. So I'm not talking about the Layla palette, I think is what it is, or the Lila palette, that purple one. I'm not talking about the gold palette or the star palettes or anything like that because they're not the same. But these ones that have the full plastic case on them, the mini ones have the rubber back, and they magnetically snap closed. I love these because they're super simple, super classic, nothing crazy, but they travel and store so freaking well because they are made so high quality. I just love that, and for me that has become a big deal because I do travel a lot, whether it's out of country or just in country, us going to visit family, us going to the trailer, us going to cottages up north. It has become important to me to have palettes that do travel and go in bags really well without having to worry about them, so these are some of my favorite for that reason. Question 7. What is a palette you have that you like the shimmers more than the mattes? Now I'm gonna copy Nicole on this one because I did watch her video before I did this, and as soon as she mentioned this palette, I was like, absolutely couldn't agree more. And that is the Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe Volume 1 palette. So I got this in a boxy charm a while ago, and not that the matte shadows aren't really pretty, but it's those shimmers that keeps me hanging on to this palette. They are just so gorgeous, so buttery, so shimmery without the fallout. The colors are absolutely beautiful. I normally wouldn't think I would do an all shimmer look, but I have with this palette, and I just think it's absolutely stunning. Obviously the mattes are in a lot more wearable shades, but again, the shimmers in this palette are just so freaking nice. And a lot of other shimmers that I like in palettes, the Natasha Denona ones, for example, the Jeffree Star shimmers, all fantastic, but the mattes are just as good in a lot of those palettes. They're just as buttery and creamy and whatever. This is the only one that I can think of that the shimmers really do outshine the mattes. Alright, so number 8, a palette that you love the mattes more than the shimmers. Also, if it looks different, the lighting looks different or anything, between the time that I filmed the last question and now Tom came home, so I stopped filming for a bit, and I wasn't feeling very well. I had a really bad headache, and when that happens to me, sort of the only thing I can do is sleep, so I've been napping for a few hours, but now we're back. So, the only palette that I could think of where I really prefer the mattes to the shimmers, and it's something that actually surprised me when I got this palette is the Melt Cosmetics Amore Eterno Vita palette. I had mentioned this when I got it, that, you know, the shimmers just were coming off like hard packed, the green one in particular, but the mattes are fantastic. They're super velvety, super smooth, incredibly pigmented, so easy to use, so easy to blend. Absolutely gorgeous. And it's weird because I kind of based getting that palette off getting the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette, and the shimmers in this palette are incredible. Now, this one didn't make it in the which are the shimmers better than the mattes, because the mattes are still fantastic in this, especially for those dark tones. They're incredibly soft, incredibly pigmented, really easy to blend, just like the other one. So for me, I was a little disappointed just by some of the shimmers in this. Like I said, particularly that green one. You can still make it work, but it's just a little bit hard pack and it makes it a bit difficult. So, number 9, what is the palette that surprised you the most? To be honest, I haven't been like really surprised in one way or another by a palette that's like really standing out in my mind. I sort of, before I buy palettes, swatch them and, you know, touch the shadows. And I've, especially lately, been doing quite a bit of research. I don't impulse buy palettes that much, but there are 2 here that I did impulse buy that I kind of went into with very, very little to no opinion of, and they ended up turning out great. So one is the Violet Voss Flamingo palette. Weirdly enough, before I bought this palette, I had really never heard anything about Violet Voss shadows. Since then, I've heard a lot about like the pro shadows and that kind of thing, and they're fantastic. So this is just super fun for the summer. The shimmers are gorgeous. The mattes, again, super creamy. I was also surprised by the versatility, because looking at this, you think, it's kind of just like colorful, this and that. But there are some nice staple shades in here that allow you to like build that crazy fun look on top of something very, very natural and complimentary. I just love this so much. It was an impulse buy one day at Sephora, and it has never led me astray. It's why it's still in my collection, because like I said, if I really have a problem with a palette after a while, I normally get rid of it. The other one that I was really pleasantly surprised by, and again, I think it's because I had this like opinion of this brand in my head before I got involved with it, and that is the Kylie Jenner Take Me Away pressed powder. I don't have any of her other palettes, so I'm talking like her bronze palettes or her burgundy palettes, like the ones that have the eyes that look like they're crying. I don't have any of those. I was only really interested in this one. And even in getting it, I didn't have crazy high hopes for it, because in the nicest way, how do I say this without it sounding bad? I'm gonna just say, like, I don't have the highest opinion of the Kardashians, I guess. I now, granted, I don't know anything about them. That's just me coming in and like assuming these things. But I've used her lip kits, and they're good. The color's good, but they're also kind of drying. So I sort of felt the same way about this, where it might be okay, but I love this. This was like the best palette for me. It really worked, especially for the summertime. It's got all of those really staple neutrals, a little bit of cools, a little bit of warms. It's got some bright pops of color. Really, really into this. I have taken this on vacation with me. I don't remember what I called it, if I said take me away or take me on vacation. It's called Take Me on Vacation. I have taken it on vacation, and I was really, really happy with all of the looks that I got. But I was surprised that I like this palette as much as I do. The last question is, what is the palette that comes to mind with your favorite color story? This was really difficult for me. Even in my little notes where I wrote at least one palette for every other category, I don't really have one written down for here. To be honest, like, I opened them all, I looked at them all, and I like a lot of the color stories. But there wasn't, basically, I feel like we all feel like if we could design our own eyeshadow palette with our own color story, what would it be like? And I don't have one that matches up to that. So instead, I picked 3 that I've actually already mentioned that I really like the vibe that they went for. I like the selection of color. So the first one is the Tan Lines palette by Jouer. Again, I love all these neutral kind of tones. You've got like a peach, a nice darker brown, a nice in-between sort of pink. You've got 3 different textures or 4 different textures of shadows. You've got the foiled shadow, the shimmer shadow, the mattes, and there's kind of like a satin vibe. It's just very bright, very colorful for summer. However, you can get away with some of these lighter, more neutral, you know, conservative, versatile shades, and then a pop of some of the bright shades. I really, really like that. That in mind, it has a similar color story to my Natasha Denona Tropics palette. Again, with all of those beautiful, beautiful neutral staple tones, but also with the fun, bright colors so that you can really, really play with the shadows, really have fun with them. And I feel the same way about the Thirsty palette as well. This one is probably the closest to what my color story would be in a shadow palette. It would have yellows and some blues and then a whole bunch of neutral colors, probably also some greens in it as well, because I am a big fan of like a nice foresty green shadow or even a lime green shadow. I think that's how I have to think about my favorite color story is what is the color story that I would design? What is the one that speaks to me the most? So that is it for this palette tag. I know I kind of cheated a little bit. I didn't stick to one per category. But you know what? Tags are about like creativity and what your favorite things are, and I gave you all of my honest opinions on all of the eyeshadow palettes that I mentioned. I will link all the eyeshadow palettes down below so that if they are still available, you can get them and try them for yourself. Let me know down in the comments, you know, if you don't have this, if you don't have a YouTube, okay, if you don't have a YouTube channel, but you still want to answer some of the questions, throw an answer down below. If there was one question that you were just like, I know this palette, da 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 da, put it down below. Let me know. What do you agree with about mine? What do you disagree with? If you have your own YouTube channel and I haven't seen it, and I haven't tagged you down in the description box, do this challenge for yourself and link it down below. I would love to see it. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. I will catch you guys next time. Bye.